Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks for the organizers being extremely on time. It's quite rare to see, but thank you very much. I've been very fortunate to be in the startup ecosystem, digital natives, working with CEOs, CTOs in startups and digital natives for the last 10 to 12 years now. In that case, how is the next 10 years going to be different? Is this a moment which is going to be transformational? What's that pivot, and why is that pivot going to happen for digital natives which are serving enterprises in India and also outside India? It's only fair, after spending about 6 years in this organization, to start by quoting them. Gartner believes and estimates that 80% of the enterprises will use GenAI capabilities by 2026. That's another 24 months, probably 2 years down the line. Couple of things for all of us to see as part of the startup ecosystem, digital native ecosystem, is the enterprise focus, which means our end customers. As a startup, product company, tech company, digital native, trying to serve the enterprise market globally, 80% of them would be on GenAI capabilities. If we double click on that, the incremental economic value that all of us can benefit from would be about $4 trillion across the top 50 use cases of GenAI, which means 60 to 70% of the business processes in our enterprise organizations, if we're going to try and serve them with a product or a product or service, is going to be 60 to 70% automated, leveraging GenAI use cases. If we double click again, what are the top industries that are actually going to help us get to that $4 trillion? The first industry I would talk about will be the banking, financial services industry. And if we look at GenAI platforms, applications, use cases, contribution to their profits and the profit margin, if we take financial services, it's going to be about $300 billion globally. And when we look at pharma and healthcare, it's probably going to be about $100 billion. And then when we look at software and tech, that's going to be another $300 billion. Last but not the least, and probably the one industry which has taken the leap ahead already in terms of leveraging vector use cases, vector search, semantic search, which is retail and CPG, there we probably see about $500 billion of potential incremental profit margin that these industries can look into. Which also means, as a digital native organization, startup organizations, these four enterprise industries become our biggest priority in terms of our go-to-market. I'm sure all of us in this room would know that the layers of GenAI would definitely have the core foundation, whether we call it LLM or the foundation layer. And then there is a layer which is eventually interacting with our end customers, where they probably have a text interaction or a GenAI interaction. There is a layer in between, which is the tooling layer, which is helping us in two things. One, making sense of that data, and then helping us build the end user application that is required. Why is this important? Imagine the sources of data that you would require talking to your end customer in an application. The multiple data sources that are being interacted, starting with your online transaction data, and then when we are looking at GenAI use cases, would be of course the vector data, and then you would have full text search, FTS data, which has been in the industry for quite some time now, and then of course your OLAP, the analytics data that is required, and then now we've started seeing a lot of use cases for streaming data, and then last but not the least is if you have specific, and in fact the previous panel was talking about the IoT use cases, time series collections. So those are multiple use cases, multiple data sources that are flowing. Imagine if there was a platform that could store all of these data together help you process, and then help you build the end user application that's going to interact with your end customers or the platform that you're building for your customers. That's precisely MongoDB Atlas. MongoDB Atlas, a few examples I would take. When MongoDB Atlas is part of somebody's infrastructure layer, one, what are they doing? What are they trying to provide as a service for their end customer? And second, what's the relevance of MongoDB Atlas in their ecosystem? The first example is Devanagari, which is a platform that automates the web pages, PDFs online. And here the reason why they chose Atlas, MongoDB Atlas, was because they wanted to ensure that all of that transaction data, all of that vector search data and the full text search data cannot be on different databases, creating a lot of complex architecture. They wanted a single developer data platform, and that's how they chose MongoDB Atlas. The second use case is Innoware, and this is an organization which automates regulatory reports in the healthcare sector. And here again, for them, the predominant primary reason was they wanted to unify the semantic search and the full text search, and they wanted to leverage it on one single platform. Last but not the least is GoBots. It's probably the most common use case we hear in terms of Gen AI, which is the chatbots that we have to create, which is eventually having an interaction with our end customers. So there, for them, it was very critical that the database which stores analytics data, transaction data, also needs to store the vector data that comes in, also needs to store the time series database, which is the multiple interactions that a customer is having on a particular chatbot. Now that I've spoken about end user examples, if I take examples of what we do within MongoDB. Within MongoDB, we also believe in this term of eat our own dog food, which means how have we leveraged these Gen AI use cases. And I want to highlight two of them. Number one is tech support. Imagine most of the startups, digital natives, are building their product applications on MongoDB. Enterprises like banks, financial services, manufacturing companies who have their own tech team, or they're probably working with ISV partners, are building on MongoDB, which means our tech support has a lot of customer interaction. So there, a couple of applications that we've built internally, leveraging Gen AI capabilities, is the TS tools and the Mana AI generator, and then the GPT chatbot, which helps our tech support team in increasing their productivity when we give tech support to our end customers. The second use case I'll speak about which is probably picking up very rapidly in the last 6 months, especially when we're working with large enterprises who have a legacy architecture. Let's say Oracle architecture, MySQL architecture, MS SQL architecture. And they know that they have to move into microservices architecture, NoSQL requirement. But they also know that it's going to take a lot of manpower, effort in making the entire re-architecture. And if we could build, and what we call it is the entire modernization factory, leveraging Gen AI capabilities, which is helping our developers move from legacy application architecture to the latest microservices architecture in probably 1/10 of the time that it used to take, and vis-a-vis probably 1/6 of the cost that you would actually incur if you had to maintain those legacy applications. So these are the two examples we've seen internally where we've been able to leverage Gen AI use cases, build a product based on Gen AI use case, and one, support our customers, two, also help them generate revenue, which helps us generate revenue. In a nutshell, I would want to summarize by saying the reason why MongoDB Atlas helps our digital native partners, ISV partners, startups who are building the product to serve those top 4 industries that we spoke about. If you look at whether it's a BFSI industry, retail industry, healthcare, pharma, or even in fact the software and the tech industry. is imagine you had one single developer data platform where you could store and query and run data from your online transaction. It could be from your time series IoT use cases. It could be your full text search, which is the plain vanilla search that is required. And then you want to have semantic search. You want to have vector data coming into it, and you need a vector database for that. And then, of course, last but not the least is where we've seen uptick of stream data, which is required for stream processing. All of that in one single platform is what MongoDB Atlas is, and we'll be more than happy. We do have a stall for MongoDB there, and we also have technical experts here. So we'll be more than happy to discuss with all of you of how MongoDB Atlas can help digital natives and startups build products for the future. Thank you.